Let's chat money. Everybody's favorite topic.
Everybody loves to talk about money. It never makes anyone uncomfortable ever.
Welcome to Talking in Spirals, Season 2, Episode 2. Today we're talking all about financial wellness and what it's like managing finances as freelancers.
Yeah, and not enough people talk about money. I think there would be a lot more financial wellness within the communities of young women if it was talked about more openly.
Absolutely.
So Maria and I decided that we really need to make an episode about this. This is something that we're both really passionate about, and we want to share how we manage our finances. And also, being sustainability minded people, it's very taboo in some sustainability circles to talk about money and to actually want to have money and to want to save and invest, etc. And it can be tricky when you care about certain causes or values or ethics, and the industry that goes alongside personal finance doesn't always line up. So we're going to chat about that, and we're going to get into it, and we're going to be transparent, and we're going to dive in. So thank you so much for being here, and we have a quick ad break. Today's episode is brought to you by W&P. If you have been into sustainability for a while, or any sort of food prepping or anything, you've definitely seen their products on social media. They're incredibly beautiful reusables of all shapes and sizes with all different purposes that can be used to prevent single-use plastic use.
You've been W&P's biggest fan for a long time, haven't you?
A long time. I'm so grateful for every single product I have from them. They make really innovative, sustainable swaps for single-use kitchen disposables that I honestly haven't seen from other brands. And they're also so beautiful. So I have to say, this is one of my all-time favorite kitchen brands. I get comments all the time as to where my stuff is from, and a lot of the time, the beautiful stuff in my kitchen is from W&P. I highly recommend checking out their reusable bags. They're made out of silicone. They also have cup cubes, which you can freeze your food prep in. They have reusable stretch wrap to replace saran wrap in your kitchen. All sorts of products. Honestly, there's so much good stuff on their site that can really help you reduce your waste in the kitchen while also creating a really beautiful aesthetic, because their products are really thoughtfully designed. They're so gorgeous. So highly recommend checking out W&P.
We are so excited to be working with W&P, and they did give us a discount code, so you can use the code SPIRALS15 at WNP.com to save on any sustainable and eco-friendly kitchen products. We'll also leave all of that information in the episode description for you. Thanks again to W&P for sponsoring this episode.
So before we get started, Maria's eating Cheez-Its right now. Crunching sounds.
That's my actual hyperfixation.
Before we get started, we're both really chaotic people. They get very hyperfixated on very niche topics. So Maria, what is your hyperfixation?
Oh, we are both very good at going all in on every little thing that we do. This week, my hyperfixation is definitely gardening. It's finally gardening season. I live in Buffalo, but my gardening season really starts in May and ends in September. So it's very short compared to the rest of the country just because of where I live. But it's finally gardening season. My garden looks great. Things are starting to actually grow. And my favorite thing has been recently in the morning after breakfast, my husband goes into shower for work. And then I take my coffee and I bring it outside and I check on all my plants. I water my plants if they need some water. And it's just a very peaceful morning ritual that has really just brought me a lot of joy. And I'm so excited. I'm going to start harvesting stuff. I'm growing so much in my garden this year. I've expanded my garden. It's insane. I love gardening. I could talk your ear off for 12 years.
Well, lucky for you, we are going to do an episode all about that in the future, and just gardening and creating your own food from scratch, etc., being more resilient, self-sufficient. But for now, I am curious, what is the thing that you're growing that you're most excited about?
I'm growing dark night pumpkins. So they're going to be small pumpkins that are going to be black.
Oh my God, I cannot wait.
Isn't it so cool?
Yes, I am so excited.
I'm so excited. I really hope that I get fruit on them. I can see a couple of them starting to develop, and I was able to hand pollinate one of them, which is something I'd also never done before. I am very much a chaos gardener where I throw a bunch of seeds in a bed and hope for the best, which is the complete opposite of my personality everywhere else. I had never hand pollinated anything before. I usually grow things that just self pollinate. I had to actually hand pollinate it. So I'm really hoping that I did it right. I'm really hoping that I get to grow a Dark Knight pumpkin. I'm most excited about that.
I just Google image search the Dark Knight pumpkins and I'm even more obsessed than I thought I would be. They are so dark. They're like black as night. They're
They're
amazing.
so cool. They're so cool.
Wow, I really, really hope you get some because I will be very much checking your videos to see when you harvest a Dark Knight pumpkin.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm going to document the whole thing. Because I'm very curious as to whether or not they go from like green right to black or if they like
Interesting.
how they change in color. I don't know. I'm really excited.
I'm seeing that the inside is bright orange
Yeah.
still, so
So I have no idea how it's going to go, but just like everything else, everybody always blasts me on the internet during gardening season because I don't actually research things. I just kind of try it and like see what happens because
that's what I would
when
do.
you research things, a lot of people that are giving you those video answers are like in Florida or Texas or places that have way longer gardening seasons. It doesn't really work compared to like New York gardening. So I've always had the mentality of just trying it and seeing what happens. So that's what we're trying this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I personally am very excited for a video that I know will be coming in the near future, a
Yes.
homemade kitchen restock with Dark Knight pumpkin soup.
Yes. I'm so excited. I can't wait to grow them.
You know she's gonna freeze it in super cubes.
Of course, always. I'm also growing like sugar pie pumpkins.
Ooh, lots of pumpkins. For those of you who don't follow Maria on social media, A, what are you doing? And B, she's going to be posting a lot of gardening stuff, I'm sure, as she always is. So you should follow along and see her gardening journey during gardening season because in Buffalo it is quite limited. So get on the train now.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. What is your hyperfixation this week?
Oh, I thought you'd never ask. My hyperfixation, unfortunately for everyone listening, is a very niche sociological topic. You guys know I'm about to dive in on a niche sociological topic. I'm going to try to keep it really brief, though. This is always my hyperfixation. All the time. This is one of my hyperfixations that I talk about constantly, read about constantly, but I never really talk about on the podcast that much. As you guys know, I mention it in every episode. I have a sociology degree. Everyone's like, shut up, we know. Do I do anything with it besides read? No. But I am very, very hyperfixated and concerned with the rise of like far right traditionalism in online spaces. We did do an episode about trad wives, the rise of the trad wife in season 1 of this podcast. And it was really interesting to me because I really do read about this stuff on a near constant basis. It's definitely one of my main niche interests. And I'm seeing a lot of far right traditionalism, specifically within like gender roles, get very normalized online. I'm sure an example that the general public is very well aware of at this time was Harrison Butker's commencement speech at Benedictine. The graduating class was there at their graduation ceremony, and he gave a speech all about how women should basically be in the home and fulfill their quote unquote vocation of a homemaker.
Gross.
Gross. That speech went very viral for a lot of reasons, and I think it reached a lot of people who are unaware that this is becoming increasingly common in online spaces and just culturally. A lot of young people really getting fired up on far right ideology and high demand religion, very traditional values. And I think it's really fascinating. I mean, I find it disturbing in some ways and also in others. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. Maria and I have talked about it on this podcast, how we have returned to some forms of traditionalism in terms of like making things from scratch and being self-sufficient and living a slower lifestyle. However, like we talked about before, when it comes with very black and white gender roles that are very regressive for women in particular, it's really troubling. And I personally read about this like every single night. I am really obsessed with reading about the rise of like traditional values, traditional gender roles. And I think about it a lot. I write about it a lot. I read about it a lot. And it's just really interesting. I don't know if you've noticed it. We personally follow a lot of like sourdough and gardening and homesteading accounts. And a lot of times those are like thinly veiled far right propaganda, which is terrifying.
I'm making this loaf of bread today. You should submit to your husband. I shouldn't have the right to vote. But let's make some good bread.
And I'm like, damn, I followed for the bread. And then you had to throw that in there.
Just watch all the videos on mute.
It happens far too often. So, Maria and I both in the past have made content being like, "Hey, we talk about sourdough and gardening and sustainability and like living a simple life, but we also like believe that you should have rights." Just a disclaimer. It's kind of sad that we have to give that disclaimer.
I gave that disclaimer on a video, the video that I did to Beyoncé's Texas song, and it is still going viral. And I have so many people arguing in the comments on Facebook and on Instagram, and even still on TikTok, literally just arguing about trad wives. It's insane. Like, I posted that video several months ago, and it's still getting so much traction.
Let them argue. Honestly, what it comes down to for me, and this is a very nuanced topic, but what it comes down to for us, I mean, I know that you feel the same way because we've talked about this so much. There is nothing wrong with wanting to have traditional values in your life. There's nothing wrong with having your own opinions, but when it becomes regressive to other people and society as a whole, that's where the problem comes in. So if you want to just stay home and have your husband be the breadwinner and you take care of the kids and you cook and clean, if that works for you, that's amazing. However, not advocating for other people's rights to do what they want to do, what works for their family and their life, that's the issue. And a lot of these more traditional submissive wife accounts, if you read between the lines, they're not saying, this is what works for me, but I love that if you want to work and go outside the home, I love that for you. They're not saying that. They're saying we need to return to traditionalism where women are back in the home, etc.
And feminism is literally just having the right to choose. And I don't know, are these women not, they're not feminists? They don't really care?
Well, there's a big push in anti-feminist rhetoric, like actively saying I'm an
Yeah,
anti-feminist. So that's concerning to me. And I will be keeping tabs on it and I will be continuing to talk about it because I think about it all the time and I'm constantly reading about it. And it's just very fascinating to me, these pipelines, how people often will get into this world starting off with like holistic living. And then all of a sudden they go full QAnon conspiracy theorist, submit to my man.
it is a slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope. We did an entire episode about it, and we're going to do another episode about it this season because we can go in a lot harder now. So we have a lot more to say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Already can't wait for that next episode. It's going to be quite long.
going to be great. I can't wait. I love to talk about traditional values, and I love to talk about the rise of alt right politics and why I think it's a problem and how I think it's going to affect our future.
It's a good topic.
So, yeah, just a lighthearted hyperfixation.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
Just a fun, casual topic. You're like, I'm growing pumpkins. And I'm like, far right politics are ruining my future.
Gotta have a healthy mix.
Or an unhealthy mix or a spiral.
We have a lot of those, that's for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about money. We cannot start a conversation about finance and financial wellness overall without talking about privilege and the aspects that privilege plays and the role that privilege plays in financial well being overall. So if you have guilt and shame surrounding finance, if you did not grow up with money, if this is a sore subject for you, I see you, I'm here with you. This system that we're living in, specifically in the United States, absolutely is broken and
Mhm.
favors the wealthy. And this content, I'm just going to be honest, that's not for them. This content is for the average person who is working hard and struggling to make ends meet and doesn't know where to start. I believe that talking about this is going to have a positive impact the more we talk about it because this wasn't talked about. This was not, when I
Mhm.
was growing up, this wasn't something that we discussed. There are not enough resources available to people who are not in the 1% to help save money and utilize money and live a fulfilled, free financial life. So that's what this is taking a small step toward. If you are triggered or upset about talking about money, I totally get that. I felt that way before. Maria has too. There are all kinds of systems of oppression at play here. We don't need to get into it in this particular episode, but things like race, class, education level, things like that, geographic location, family money, all of that comes into play here. And it's very important to touch on those subjects. So that's a little disclaimer. But let's talk about money.
I love talking about money, and I feel like it's very taboo to talk about money, but I don't know. I think it's important, and especially in our specific careers of freelancers and how we manage money is very interesting. And I do want to start with the disclaimer that neither of us are financial advisors. We're not advising you.
In case you couldn't tell.
Do your own research. We're going to share our personal experiences and how we manage money. Take inspiration from it if you want, but speak to a financial planner if this is something you really want to invest a lot of time in and invest a lot of money in. But this is our experience.
Yeah, this is just going to be a brief intro. Of course, podcast episodes are not long enough to go over every aspect of financial wellness. And we're just two idiots. So please do some more research. But we want to share, as an idiot, what worked for me. If you are also an idiot who doesn't know anything and is terrified to set foot into the world of finance because you think it's just a bunch of bros telling you to stop buying nice lattes, yeah, this episode is for you. We want to talk to, I think our podcast listenership is predominantly women, like by a long shot.
It's like 98% women.
Yeah, as it should be. This is for the girls. We know that. The girls, gays, and theys. And I hope that this is of help to you.
I have so much to say, and budgeting and financial planning has really not been a priority of mine until like the last year or so. And I think part of it is because I don't know about you, but in middle school and high school, I learned how to write a check, how to balance a literal checkbook.
Yeah, me too.
Those skills are not as important as they once were. I mean, granted, everyone should know how to write out a check, but I don't know a single person that still balances a physical checkbook.
No. I mean, also, that's just like sign of the times. When we were in school, more people were using checks. But I think it's important to have every young person interested in personal finance and taking a class on it because we know
Mhm.
so many people who are out here struggling. I was one of those people and I still don't have it all figured out. But it wasn't until I had to take the initiative myself
Me
to
too.
force myself to learn about this and learn about it from a healthy way, healthy lens, that I actually was able to get my finances under control. And I'm pretty comfortable with the way I have it set up now. So,
And there's really not a lot of resources though for us now. I don't know. When I had an actual job with a 401k and an HR department, there were a few more resources, but not geared toward young people. We were almost just like expected to know everything. And that's not the way it is.
yeah, like I'm not going to listen to Dave
No.
Ramsey. This is a Dave Ramsey hate podcast, okay? I'm just
You
kidding.
have somebody though that you love for financial advice, don't you?
I have a couple of accounts that I really like, honestly, but I want to talk about some accounts that have helped me, some people that have helped me get my finances on track, and some things that have been really, really influential to me. And Maria has a few of them as well. So, first off, the person who got me interested in personal finance, and I haven't watched her content in a very long time, but her account is called Her First 100K, and she's all about getting more money into the hands of women because we're going to talk about this a little bit more in future episodes, etc. But it is a lot more difficult for women to get ahead financially in this country, and a lot of the resources are predominantly pointed towards men. So her first 100K is all about creating financial equity and financial education for women in particular. And so that was really appealing to me because I really was very opposed to like the finance bro whole thing going on that I was seeing on TikTok and Instagram, and it just wasn't appealing to me. I didn't want to be a part of that. It just didn't seem like it was made for me. I really liked her. I started listening to her during the pandemic, and she had one episode of her podcast in particular that is what I have based my financial life off of, my financial baseline. And that episode of her podcast is called Where Do I Start? AKA the financial game plan. She basically walks you through the steps that will help you build your financial game plan. And she made it very clear, just like a couple of steps, things that you should get in place. And that's what I've done. And it's served me very well. So I'll just quickly go over those things. And I want to make sure that this is like digestible. I know there's a lot of like shame and guilt around money, and people just don't want to talk about it at all because if they have some debt or they're uncomfortable with some of the decisions that they've made, if it's a sore subject for them, then they sometimes just avoid the subject altogether. And that's not healthy. That's not what we want. It is important to like dive in, talk about this, get this done. I feel like this episode was really helpful. It's like 20 minutes. And yeah, this is what I base my finances around. So, step one, we're going to talk about banking. This is a tough subject for those of us who are interested in sustainability and who care about the environment and people and planet, because as we all know, banks are oftentimes terrible.
They spend a lot of money on fossil fuels.
Right. So I wanted to start from the beginning. If we're talking about banking, if we're talking about who to use as a bank for all of your money, it actually does have an impact. It does matter. And I'm not perfect in this regard, but I wanted to share a resource that has helped me a lot in the past with choosing a bank that actually helps with my values. This is not sponsored, but we really, really have found that this is an amazing site. It's called bankforgood.org. It's all about helping you choose a bank that aligns with your values. So, this is what I use to choose my business bank. It's literally just a big database with resources on how to choose the right bank that you want to use. So you put in your state, you put in what you're looking for, whether it's a personal or business account, you put in if you need a physical location of the bank, you mention the causes that are important to you, and Bank for Good helps you find a bank that actually aligns with your values and has all of the things that you actually need. So I bank with a small bank here in Florida for my business. It's actually literally all about climate, and I'm really grateful to be with them. Yeah, choosing a bank is really important. Choosing platforms that align with your ethics and values. Obviously, we can't all be perfect. I do still have a credit card that is with a bank that is not environmentally friendly. I will phase that out in time, but for now, I have to keep it. But just if you're going to open a new bank account, if you're going to start from scratch with your finances, it's really good to choose a bank that aligns with your ethics and values. I closed my Wells Fargo account, the checking account that I had since I was 16. I closed it a couple years ago because I don't align with Wells Fargo as a bank, and I don't want to have them having access to my money.
And I think Wells Fargo is one of the top 3 that's just, like, horrible, right?
It's pretty bad, yeah.
Chase is, I think, the worst.
Yeah, and this is no shame to anyone who still uses those. You do what you got to do. It's just about having the information. So if you check out the site Bank for Good, it can help you. It's a great resource. It's super simple, it's super easy to use. It can help you choose. And again, not sponsored. I just used them in the past and I really, really enjoyed using them. So
Yeah, and so I do the same thing. I have a local, well, like a statewide bank here that I do for, we have our mortgage through there, our personal accounts, but then also I have a business bank account there. But on the other hand, I did not want to have all of, like, what if you go into the grocery store and my bank is down, like the cards aren't working or anything? So unfortunately, I do still have one credit card from Chase.
I do too.
It's like the Disney credit card where you can get Disney points and stuff like that. So I don't think it's a bad thing to still have like a credit card at a different company to have that extra security in case you're in the grocery store with a cart full of groceries and your card isn't working because the system's down. And I used to work at a grocery store and that happens pretty frequently. So I think it's important to recognize that you don't have to be completely perfect.
No.
And one alternative, if you're like us, where you have credit cards with an unsustainable bank, an alternative is to not carry a balance from month to month. So we pay our credit cards at the end of every single month and paid off. And we are
Yep.
very grateful to not live paycheck to paycheck to be able to do that. So if you're in a completely different spot, I understand and I feel for you. And I know that it's hard. We've all been there. But that's one way you can make banking or having a credit card at an unsustainable bank a little bit more sustainable because you're not paying them interest. You're just paying off your charges right away.
Right, because they're using your money to invest in fossil fuels and literal war crimes. They're using your money to invest in some things that you probably don't agree with if you're listening to this podcast and you share our values. Big banks, we try to avoid if possible. And again, don't feel shame. You do what you can.
And divesting is hard and it's not going to happen overnight either. So nobody's going to be upset with you for hanging on to your accounts for a little bit longer until you're at a better spot to be able to move them and pick a different bank.
Right. And that is a term that's going to come up throughout this conversation, divesting. You want to share what divesting is?
We talk about divesting in the sense of divesting away from fossil fuels. So when you are holding your money at a specific bank, they're then taking that money and investing it in different things. And a lot of the big banks are investing in fossil fuels. So divesting is basically pulling your money from those corporations and banks that are doing that, and saying you're not going to do it and investing in a bank that actually puts the money toward, I don't know, like things like solar or invests in things that are better for our planet.
So, divesting is essentially the opposite of investing, where we're taking our money out of things that we no longer agree with.
And not everybody's at a point to be able to do that. It's going to be different. Everybody's at different level.
In the financial game plan, I would say the first step is finding financial institutions that align with your values, if that's possible for you. If that's not right now, that's totally fine. The second step that I think is really, really important, that I think everybody should be doing, because we all want to have financial freedom, we all want to have access to money money. We want our money to grow. We want to have that stability underneath us. We need to be saving. And the best way to do that, I have learned, is through a high yield savings account. So basically, if you're not familiar, a high yield savings account is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a savings account where you make a much bigger return than on a traditional savings account. So they are all FDIC insured. The ones that you should be using are all safe. There's really, honestly, in my opinion, no downside to having a high yield savings account. I actually have several high yield savings accounts, and they make me money quite literally doing nothing. So your money is sitting there and the interest builds up and you make money doing nothing. It's a no-brainer in my opinion. Everybody should have one. I have mine through Ally Bank, which I'm not convinced is the most sustainable option, but that's the one that I have right now and I absolutely love. Like I've had no bad experiences with them. The interest rate is very good. I believe it's like 4% right now, which is pretty unheard of. It's pretty great to have a high yield savings account because you're essentially building upon your money while doing nothing. Branching off of that, I think it's important for every single person to have an emergency fund. And I know what you're thinking. I have debt. I don't have the money for an emergency fund. I need to pay off my debt.
Yes.
I learned from her first 100K and a couple other financial people online that I really, really like that it's most important to have an emergency fund before everything else because it's exactly what it sounds like. It's emergencies. You don't know
Mhm.
when something could happen where you could literally be screwed, to put it lightly. It could be a medical thing, your car could break down, you could lose your job,
Yep.
so many things can happen that we have no control over. And it gives me so much peace of mind knowing that I have an emergency fund. I have 3 months of expenses in my emergency fund. It depends on where you are in your life, what you're going to need, but have, in my opinion, you should have something set aside, ideally in a high yield savings account for emergencies that you do not touch. So I have a list of emergencies in my head, it's a vague list of things that I can use that money towards. But the goal is not to touch it. Don't use it. It's for emergencies. So that is very, very, very important for establishing financial wellness, I believe, because you never know when things are going to happen.
Mhm.
And feeling like you have to put an emergency on a credit card that might have 13% interest rate or something insane, that's not a good feeling. So that money is there for my peace of mind. It is labeled emergency fund in my bank. I do not touch it. It is there and it hasn't been used yet. And I pray that there's no emergencies in my near future, but
Yeah.
knock on wood. But anyways, it's really nice to have. So what do you think?
I completely agree with you. Completely agree. My husband and I are doing high yield savings accounts and emergency funds a little bit differently. So we own our home. We took out a mortgage. It's a pretty affordable mortgage. It's definitely cheaper. It was cheaper for us to buy than it was to rent at the time.
Unheard of.
Yeah. We are starting to think about our long-term finances and what we want to be doing in the next few years. So we're kind of choosing an alternative path to high yield savings account and emergency funds. So we obviously both have savings accounts and combined savings, and we have our saved for an emergency fund. We keep 6 months of expenses, but that also covers us if, I don't know, we're at the house and our washer and dryer breaks, our air conditioning breaks, something that you need to spend a lot more money. So we have 6 months of savings in an emergency fund. Other than that, we are keeping our savings incredibly minimal and we are paying down our house as fast as we can because that is basically our high yield savings account. If you don't know, when you buy a house, you pay thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars over the course of a mortgage loan to the bank in interest. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. And interest rates are super high right now. We are lucky that we had a pretty low interest rate when we bought our house. So it's not too bad, but still over the course of the loan is over $100,000 in interest.
Nope.
Like insane. Absolutely insane. So we have a set number that our savings stays at, and any money after that goes directly into extra payments on our house to pay off that debt. So we're basically treating it as a high yield savings account because by paying off our mortgage extra, we're saving that interest that we would spend down the line. And then we're thinking of moving in 3 to 5 years. So all of the money that we're putting into our house, we're going to get back when we roll it into our next house. So So it's a separate alternative to help lower our debt. And we always make sure that our savings accounts stay at a certain amount so we have that emergency fund if we need to.
That's exactly what I was going to say for the next on the financial game plan for me is paying off debt. We're going to talk about paying off debt. So I think that this is a thing that scares people. It certainly scared me. A couple of years ago, I had debt and I was crippled by it. It scared me. I am not completely, I do have some credit card debt right now, but I am otherwise, apart from my credit card, I am debt free. That is because I prioritized living minimally and paying off debt. And the way that I think everybody should do this, again, not a financial advisor, but I listen to a lot of stuff about finance, and everyone's general consensus seems to be go through your debts and find the highest interest rate for one of your debts, whether that's for a loan or a credit card. Go through, find the interest rates on your debt sources and put them in order. Which one is the most important? If you have something with 25% interest,
Ugh, yikes.
that needs to get paid off immediately. A lot of loans have really high interest rates. If you got a car loan and it has an incredibly high interest rate, that is going to be your first priority
Hmm.
when paying off debt. A lot of times people will go through and say, I have the most amount of money with this debt. Yeah, but over time with the interest rate, the other one, even though it's a lower number, it's going to end up costing you more the longer you draw it out. So, whatever debt is causing you anxiety is going to screw you over the most down the line. That is our priority. Any extra finances goes towards paying off that particular debt.
And that's exactly what we're doing with our house. And we're basically treating it as like a savings account. And I think it's also really important to mention that most people in our country, in the United States, have student loans. And you really need to look at the fine print of your student loans because if you're on the save plan, as long as you make your monthly payments, you're not gathering interest. So aside from becoming debt free, there's really no big appeal in paying off that loan early because you're not gaining interest. You're not paying any interest.
Versus you have a car loan with 20% interest, which, then that needs to be
Yes.
paid.
Yes. Or even a mortgage that even if you're 3 or 4%, it's still more than what your student loans are. So my husband and I both have student loans. So that's why we decided to put our money toward our mortgage so we can pay that down. We don't want to be putting money in other people's pockets.
Especially not nasty corporations.
No. And so when I first left college in 2019, I had taken out both federal loans, but also private loans. My private loans, when I left, had a 9.75% interest rate, which was so damaging. Just it took like my entire salary. When I first got out of college, I worked at a newspaper making just above minimum wage, like 50 cents over minimum wage, and had to spend thousands of dollars to even get a job in my field. So I was so lucky that I was able to live at home. So I had no expenses and I worked and I paid down that loan, but I left myself with pretty much no money. No money for the first year of being out of the house. And I was able to pay that loan off so fast. So if that is something that you can do and that you have the ability to do, you should do it.
Yeah. So to recap, we're going to start with an emergency fund and a high yield savings account. That is your priority. That is the most important thing. Next up, we're going to start paying down debt. And after that, we're going to talk about saving for other stuff. So once your debt is paid off, of course, emergency fund is our priority because emergencies happen. And then once you have that, pay off your debt. And once your debts are getting closer to being paid off or are paid off, we can talk about saving for other stuff. So high yield savings come into account here because again, it's free money. So I have multiple high yield savings accounts. I have one for my emergency fund, and then I also have one for one day owning property, which I don't own yet. And it's probably not going to happen anytime soon. But I do have a high yield savings account, and it's automatic transfers into my high yield savings account from my checking account every month on a certain day. So I don't have to think about it. A certain amount per month goes into there, and it's going to make interest and it's going to grow. So that way, one day when I want to make a down payment, I have that in there. If you're not there yet in your finance journey, that is fine. I was not until very recently. Everybody has their own timeline. Also, owning property is not for everybody. Having stability, having financial freedom is incredibly important, I think, especially for women. And I think it's taboo to talk about in sustainability spaces, and we just want to change that. So I automate my savings and they go into my high yield savings account every month for my house fund. So that's because I don't currently have debt. But when I did, debt was my priority.
I'm jealous.
Well, I'm jealous of you because you own a house. So, debt's not always bad.
Yeah.
Maria owns a home and a car, and like there's a lot of things that come from that. I'm renting, and that's frustrating because even though I love renting for right now and it works for me, when I think about the grand total of money I've given, it's disturbing.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I really don't wanna go and calculate, like, how much money I've spent on interest of our house and interest of our loans. Actually, I was looking at that, though, on our mortgage. We've put more money toward interest than we have to our principal in the 3 years that we've owned a house.
Yeah, I think that's very, very normal.
It is very normal.
It's upsetting, but it's
Yeah.
normal. So, after we talking about savings, let's talk about investing. Scary. Ooh.
I love investing. This is something I just started doing. And again, I wish I had the ability to take classes on this in college because
Right.
I had to learn all of this myself. And especially being a freelancer, I don't have anybody in HR that can walk
No.
me through stuff.
Oh, that would be so nice.
I know. So I recently, as a freelancer, decided that I needed to start contributing something to a 401k, something to some sort of retirement. And a year ago, I went to my bank and I opened a 401k. For some reason, I couldn't invest that money. It was literally just sitting in a 401k account. So a couple months ago, I decided to move that money out of my bank and to put it into an app called Robinhood, which is an investing app, a cryptocurrency app, a 401k app, and it's also the only app that matches your donation if you're self-employed.
Donation.
It's the only app that matches it's the only app that matches what you're putting into your 401k if you're self-employed, which is unheard of.
That is unheard of, and when we were preparing for this episode, it was the first time I'd heard Maria say that. I was like, "That's wild.
Yeah.
I've never heard of that," and I'm gonna jump on that immediately.
Yeah, because if you're with a regular standard employer, you might have sponsored
A 401k match.
yeah, like a 2% or 4% match. I mean, this match isn't much, but it's better than nothing.
Well, that's how I feel about the high yield savings account. It's not that much,
Mhm.
but it adds up over time, and it's like
Exactly.
yeah.
So,
So she uses Robinhood to invest, and investing is a really scary topic specifically. I think for a lot of women, it's kind of been like something that they just don't even want to touch because
yeah.
they feel like it's like a boys' club. I used to feel that way. I can only speak for myself, really,
You
but
can speak for me too. I agree with you there.
I was always scared and intimidated, and I thought it was like these, day trading and very intense. And the truth is that that's not the case. I literally have an investment fund through Ellevest, who is an investment firm, an investment app, an investment company that is specifically designed for women. That made me really excited to kind of give them my money. They have a really good reputation for education surrounding finance with women specifically. So that felt very exciting to me and like something that I could do. And you can invest with as little as $1. So that's pretty amazing. You don't need to have a lot of money to invest. This is something that I really, really thought for a long time. I need to have a bunch of money to invest. That's not the case.
Yeah, I think Robinhood's is also very small that you need to invest on. And I don't know, I guess I never realized that you could invest right from your phone until like a year ago, that you didn't even need to like have an actual spot at a bank or I don't know, however people in the old days used to invest their money, but you can do it right from your phone. It's just an app that you can download and you can pick the stocks and pick the cryptocurrency and use it with as little money.
You can just have them automate it for you.
Oh yeah, my part of mine is automated.
Yeah. So the sustainability of it all, right? I also invest with a company called Carbon Collective. And full transparency, I did work with them in the past. So they are all about creating a theory of change through sustainable investing. So they do not want to encourage the fossil fuel industry through investments, and they're very pro divesting. So, not sponsored. It was sponsored like 3 years ago, but I'm not being paid to say this. I do think that it's important to support companies like this. There are other sustainable investment companies, but Carbon Collective is just one that I've worked with in the past, and I still have money invested with them. And yeah, I really think it's pretty cool. So there are sustainable ways to work in personal finance and to work on your personal financial wellness, and it doesn't have to be something that you push away entirely. Like, I don't want to participate in this system because it's unsustainable. It doesn't have to be like that. So, there are options nowadays, more so than ever, that encourage equity and for people and planet within the world of finance. And so, rather than shy away from this topic altogether, we want to be able to push for change and encourage other people to take control of their finances, have that financial wellness, that financial freedom, while also not contributing to systems that we disagree with.
Mhm.
The woman who created that podcast is her first 100K on Instagram. Her name is Tori Dunlap. Again, I haven't really looked at her content in a long time, but when I was getting started with my financial journey, that was the episode of the podcast that I really listened to. The episode is called The Financial Game Plan, and it's the Financial Feminist podcast.
I didn't actually become interested in finance based on creators. Not that I just like woke up one day and was like, I'm going to care about my finances today, but that's kind of what happened. So instead of turning to like online, I went to Etsy and I bought like a $3 financial plan budgeting spreadsheet. And it literally just takes care, like, it has so many different tabs on it. I input all of my information on there. I can keep track of everything, but I can also plan for the future finances. I can do sinking funds there. There's like a payoff debt calculator. That's like how I really got interested in it. And I'm a data person. Like, I like to see it visual. So there's a lot of charts that show up based on the information that you populate. So instead of recommending creators, I'm going to recommend checking out and seeing if there's a financial spreadsheet that you like and that you vibe with, because having it has changed my life.
I love a spreadsheet. So if you are not somebody, Maria is very intense, we know this, and she will like take the time to plug in the data. If you are not somebody who does this or who will do this, if you know yourself, I highly recommend, there's a lot of apps that you can use. Like Rocket Money has completely changed my life. I've been using that app for years. It is amazing. You plug in all of your different banks, all of your credit cards, whatever you have, if you have loans, if you have whatever you have, you plug them in to this app and you budget for yourself. You set up a budget, and this app will literally give you notifications if you have gone over budget, notifications if you are spending less than usual. It holds you accountable, and everything is right there because it links all of your multiple accounts and debts, and it tells you your net worth, all your investments. It's amazing for streamlining. And if people are scared to get involved in finance and looking at their financial overall well-being, this app is a game changer because it makes it so simple. You don't have to think, it's right there in front of you, and you can actually have a serious conversation with yourself about how things are going, etc. Highly recommend.
I would also like to say budgeting, doing the spreadsheet, using the app makes me feel like I have a lot more control over my finances. And it has really gotten me and my husband out of the mentality that we live paycheck to paycheck. And obviously, you need to make money to not live paycheck to paycheck. But being able to literally budget every single dollar where it goes is huge. And it's really helped us out a lot. And we have different funds that we add to, and just different sinking funds based on different things like house projects and pet expenses and all of that. And literally just having a spot to write it down has been really helpful. We never used to do an actual budget and have like $400 toward groceries and $100 towards pet expenses, but seeing it broken down has really helped us just maximize how we're spending our money. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to pour these crumbs in my mouth.
Cheese it break.
ASMR. All right, I finished the chips.
I also think it's kind of hard to budget as freelancers because you never know where your next paycheck is going to come from.
We could do an entire separate episode about that. And we honestly already kind of have.
Mhm.
If you haven't listened, we did an episode about being freelance content creators, and we touch a little bit on the finance aspect. We could do more. And if you guys want to hear more about that, I really do think it's hard to find financial resources for people who do not work a traditional 9 to 5 job where they're paid bi-weekly with everything already kind of sorted for them. Our income fluctuates a lot, so budgeting is very important for us. Living within our means is very important for us because you can literally make $20,000 one month and $0 the next.
Mhm.
We should actually do an episode all about budgeting and the ways we've cut costs, etc. We're very much financially independent, and unlike Harrison Butker would want us to be. When I was first getting into sustainability, I was very opposed to talking about finance because I thought that the system as a whole was problematic. And while that is true, we also still need to participate in that system. There is no way that we can completely detached from the system unless we want to go live off grid on a mountain somewhere, which honestly sounds really good right about now, but it's not going to
I
happen.
would love that.
So we need to find ways to make the system work for us and not against us. And while there's always room for improvement, we have so much to learn. we're both very young and figuring it out, and definitely not financial gurus by any sense of the imagination. I do think there needs to be more transparent conversation within our particular space, which is environmentalism, slow living, etc. Personal financial freedom is really limited by a lot of traditional financial advice that we used to get. So things like stop buying an iced coffee, avocado toast is the reason millennials are in debt.
Oh my God.
That's so absurd and so annoying.
Leave my avocados
Leave
alone.
my avocados alone.
There really should be no shame surrounding the topic of money. Everybody's situation is different. Everybody's going to have different things thrown at them in life or be at different financial stages of your life. I mean, I'm 26. I'm insanely grateful that I own a house with my husband. We are doing very well financially, but there are a lot of people who are our age who are not. And there are a lot of people who may still own a house but are not doing well financially. And everybody's situation is going to be different.
There's also a lot of people who are literally not even in the same reality because they have so
Yeah.
much money. They're not even living in the same reality. And that's something I struggle with a lot. I wanted to touch on this more in this episode, but I have lived the last 11 years of my life in incredibly wealthy areas, and it messes with my head, and it's
Yeah.
become an issue for me a lot. The comparison of myself to the people that surround me in these wealthy communities that I have found myself living in South Florida, because I'm not a wealthy person. I'm an average working class person. Now I don't work as hard as I used to in terms of like I used to work in kitchens and things, but you understand what I'm saying. Like I absolutely have to think about money every single day. And if you feel like you're looking at somebody's content online because we're content creators, or if you're looking at somebody's life from afar and thinking, wow, they must just have it all figured out, chances are that's not the case.
Nope. We do not have it figured out.
If you have debt, the vast majority of Americans are right there with you. You are not alone in that. You're seeing a very glamorized version of life online nowadays that I don't think is healthy for young people to be seeing, because the average person that is showing off all the stuff that they have, a lot of the time it's family money or it's credit card debt. I'm not to say that there aren't people who work very hard and
Hmm.
pay for everything that they have. There are those people, but for the vast majority of Americans, people are struggling. People are in debt. People are working their asses off and trying to figure out how they're going to make ends meet. So you're not alone. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Our system is really broken and it doesn't favor people who don't come from money. So I just want everyone to keep that in mind, because this is a really touchy subject. And honestly, if you're even thinking about diving into this, you're doing amazing. Seriously, because it's hard and it's scary.
All I can think about right now is I'm looking for a man in finance, trust fund, 6'5", blue eyes.
Blue eyes. My nightmare.
I love us though. We're taking control of our finances. We're making sure that our money's working for us, and it's a learning process, and we are both definitely still learning along the way.
Yeah, we're excited to continue talking about this from a sustainability lens and a freelancing lens, because I think there's not enough content on this topic from our little niche perspective. So, thank you for listening to us talk about money. I really appreciate you listening. It's something that I wish people talked about more when I got my start as a business owner.
I agree. I feel like we had to learn all of this on our own and like with each other.
Right. So, let's share the wealth, literally. Redistribute the wealth, eat the rich.
There it is.
Oh, I knew it was going to go off the rails at the end.
We have to. I mean, we are spiraling. It's our whole game here.
I love it.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
We'll see you in 2 weeks. We're going to be talking all about the hot girl hamster wheel.
I am so excited.
I cannot wait to talk about the hot girl hamster wheel. And until then, listen to this episode like 3 or 4 times and rate and review and subscribe and like and everything. We love you so much. Thank you for being here.
Bye.
Say bye to my paycheck. Bye to my finances.
Bye.
So whatever debt is causing you the most stress is going to screw you on later, screw you over later, screw you on.
Screwing in a light bulb.
Whatever debt, screw you on, baby.
Yikes.
Gross.